everybody. It's Julie for EllenHutson.com. Welcome to Hello Monday. Well, I don't know what you think. We just had a great, fantastic new release go live on Sunday, and I thought I would share today a couple of fun ideas for using the Hexagon frames. I love these things. I love the sentiments in the set called It's All Good, and I love succulents, even though I don't really have a green thumb. But anyway, here are some fun ways to use these hexagon frames. Now I'm going to start by taking the Mondo succulent pot and I'm going to align that along the top of a quarter sheet of Neenah Solar White. And I'm using my standard Misty here. And I'm going to grab some Catherine Pooler ink. This one is Moroccan Spice, I think is what it's called. And it's a nice rusty orange color, but my ink pad was dry and I haven't re-inked it. And instead of stopping and re-inking my ink pad, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. And because I'm using a Misty, this makes it so easy to just re-ink and stamp multiple times until I get that image as dark as I want. And then I'm going to take that off the platform there and grab this larger or elongated hexagon frame shape and use a little bit of washi tape to keep that anchored in place and send that through my die cutting machine. Now you can see that these cut out the hexagon shape, but also a really fun skinny frame to go with. And you can use them together, you can use them separately. Now I'm going to blend some ink on this and I put it down onto a piece of it's chipboard and I've covered it with some of that press and seal to hold it in place so I can ink it. So I'm just blending away these different colors. I think I started off with Catherine Pooler Mint, and then I switched to eucalyptus to get kind of this cool variegated ombre effect of these shades of green. So now I need to do some stamping on this, and I realized, oh, that could be a little bit tricky because it's not a square or rectangle shape that I could just flush into the corner. So I grabbed a square scrap of cardstock and I just butted that into the corner there on my Misty, and then I used some adhesive to anchor that inked up piece there, and then I'll use the magnets to hold down that quarter sheet in place. And then I can align a sentiment from the It's All Good set. This one says, I just wanted to say hello. It fits perfectly on this shape, and then I'm just going to go ahead and close the lid and get that mounted. You'll notice in a lot of my videos, I use the Misty and I also use the Mini Misty kind of interchangeably. I usually reserve the Mini Misty for sentiments and things like that because it's smaller. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and dust that with anti-static powder and then go ahead and stamp with Versamark ink and use some detail white embossing powder. And so I sprinkled that on there. And the bonus of using this quarter sheet to hold on to this is that it kept my fingers out of the way. So I could go ahead and heat emboss this and no problem. I'll set that aside for a minute, and then I'm going to come back to that panel I originally stamped with the Mondo succulent pot, and I put some of those thin 3D mounting squares. They're nice and thin, and I put those on this layer. Now, you may not need to do this to get the effect that you want. I just went this route, and I can't even remember why, but I like the end result. So, hey, you do what you like, right? Whatever floats your boat. Now, I had a whole bunch of these that I had already die cut from 80-pound cardstock, and I had them in a baggie for some other thing. And I was like, well, I just might as well use them in this way. So I'm going to take all these frames and I'm going to layer them on top of each other. And I'm using my little press and seal chipboard thing to hold it in place while I can apply some glue to it. This makes it so much easier to layer things. I'm going to make my own chipboard frame here. So I just stacked a whole bunch of those up until I felt like I was happy with how thick it was. And if it's 80-pound, it might have been 4 pieces. And if it's 110-pound, then it might have been maybe only 3 instead of 4 or 5 or whatever it is I did. So you just do it till you're happy with the thickness. So I glued them and stacked them all together, and then I added more glue to the back side of that and popped it down into that opening. Because I mounted that panel to the card front, I knew where that frame was going to go, and now I can go ahead and take that piece that I embossed. Now the adhesive tape is still on the center of the back of that thing, which is fine, and then I just took a glue pen to add some more adhesive to the outer edges because I do want it to be cemented down into this little well that it's going to get placed down into. So I'm going to press it down in there, and that's how I got it positioned perfectly. And then I'm just going to use my bone folder to just kind of press that in and make sure that I'm pressing it firmly because, you know, it's not entirely flat. It's recessed down in there, so it's deeper. It looks like it's much deeper than it might otherwise be. And then I remembered I had that frame that I had originally die cut out of the front of that panel. And I'm like, oh, and that needs to go back on top. So I added more of that Zig two-way glue pen, which works pretty spiffy for stuff like this. And I was able to just plop that right on top. And I'm just using my tweezers there to kind of squeeze the sides and get it all lined up perfectly. And that's pretty much all it takes to do that. And if you want to, you can use your bone folder to kind of burnish it down and make sure that it's firmly down. So this is a great way to create kind of a dimensional look using these frames. And you don't have to pop up the shape itself. You can just pop up the frame and it looks really cool. So now I'm going to take some Nuvo drops. I'm going to make my own epoxy dots, and I just squeezed it there onto some scratch paper to make sure I didn't, burp out a big blob there. And then I'll hold it straight up and down and squeeze out. I usually do things in threes. The odd number makes my eyes happy. So I'm just squeezing out 3 different size shapes there, circular. And they actually are raised pretty high, so they almost look like pearls on there. And I want them to flatten out more like epoxy or enamel dots. So I'm actually going to gently, a lot of times I do this with too much force and I flatten them out too much and they get a little bit misshapen. So I'm actually tapping more gently than I normally do. So they came out perfect. And then I'm going to set that aside in a level place that's warm and dry and let them dry. Now here I just wanted to share how I did the same thing on these hexagon shapes, but I mounted the frames cattywampus. It's a fun and different look. And here I popped it up and I sandwiched some striped strips of cardstock there, and then I added gold glitter on the very, very tippy top. And that's a great way to also highlight those modern hexagon shapes. And I think these are just going to be really fun to play with. So thanks for joining me. Hope you got inspired. Have a great day.